to the Indie Pod podcast. I am your host, Super Joe Pardo, and tonight I have the absolute pleasure and honor of a guest that I've known now for, going on about 6 years and just a few months here, because podcasting. So thank you, podcasting. You have brought on so many awesome people into my life that I've been so fortunate to be able to have in my life. So this week we're going to talk about niching your podcast for faster growth, and my guest here has figured that path out for himself, and he is here to talk and answer questions, and hopefully we'll do some updating and talking, because it's been a week since I've been on the show, and I'm sure some of you are wondering what's going on, and we have a virtual conference to talk about, so there's that. But first, I got to give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Podbean. Podbean is an easy and powerful way to start podcasting. They give you all the tools you need for a successful podcast, such as unlimited podcast hosting, podcast distribution, monetization options for podcasts of any size, and live stream podcasting capabilities. Sign up today at that might have been too many W's. www.podbean.com. That's podbean.com. Everybody, I need you to give a warm welcome to our guest this week, Doc Kennedy. Woo! What's up, Doc?
We're here, Joe. We're here.
We are here.
Man, we've had this thing in the calendar a long time.
we have. There's a lot of episodes that are 6-8 months booked out. And I'm so appreciative that people want to be on this show, and even so much so that when I was not feeling well a handful of weeks ago, and I was like, hey, somebody else could run the show, do the show with you. They're like, no, I want to do the show with you. I'm like, oh, God, all right. Well, I feel honored, to say the least.
There's only one Super Joe.
Sadly, but the goal is for everybody to be their super selves. So they're right. There is a Super Joe, and there's a Super Doc, and there's
there's some other guy out there named Joe, and he's kind of average. It's average Joe.
Yeah, it's average Joe Rogan. That's all. Doc, why don't you give everybody a little background about yourself, your podcasting history, your comedy history, and all of that, sir?
Well, thanks for niching it down there, Joe.
Gotcha, buddy.
So, yeah, you said that we've known each other about 6 years now, and that's about right. Yeah, I started my first podcast the same time you started Dreamers podcast. Ironically,
Dream Warriors. I had to think about that a little bit. I was upstairs because that's a thing from, what's that movie? Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, which I didn't know, but I was a big Dawkins fan, so they had the song, of course, and so I just kind of ran with that, and I thought it was cool, Yeah, but it did. I mean, that connected us. That ran about 50 episodes for me. And I did want to niche that down. As Joe said, I am a stand-up comic now, and that's why I'm here, because we've all been knocked out of work. So,
so you got to have something, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, but it's awesome that we booked this out that long ago, and we all have time now. And it's an honor to be here. Joe is. I want to just let everybody know what a good friend you've been. Like, we've never met in person.
Sadly, I wanted to. We were in South Carolina, and I was like,
"You were one state over."
Can I get to Tennessee? There was other people too, like in Georgia, but that I wanted to meet. It was just when you go with family, it's hard to bring everybody with you to hey, I'm gonna go meet this person.
Yeah. Well, you could have let me know you were in South Carolina. I'd gladly go out there.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Well, next time.
Yes. And I'm sure they're probably.
But you got to come to Nashville too, man. This is a great hub for podcasters. Yeah.
I've heard and I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast meetups here are pretty epic. So,
so you've been podcasting since 2014, like me. That's how we connected over Dreaming, Dreamers podcasting, and we're like, so since then you've had a couple other shows, right?
Yep, 2.
Go ahead.
I've had Filmmakers Focus, because I was using stand-up to get into acting, and then figured out, well, I actually really enjoy the stand-up stuff. So, and I'll still act. I still do that. But I did Filmmakers Focus and had people of all types of background with filmmaking come on. That was awesome. That ran 40-some episodes. And then now I'm doing a show called Free to Laugh. And that's comedy versus political correctness, because it was about a week ago that we still thought political correctness would kill comedy, and it turned out it was going to be this dang virus. So
who would have thought, right? That a virus would have just killed all live events, all gatherings. It like took it to an extreme. Like, hey, this political correctness thing, like we're gonna run with that, but like we're gonna run with it to the extreme of literally no one can be around each other. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back.
And we will. This isn't the end of the world as we know it.
I'm not worried about it at all. But it just throws your schedule off, and it's a
frees
bummer.
Your schedule up. It's opportunities,
that's true.
Right?
I absolutely agree with that, Joe. I'm seeing a lot of opportunity out there right now. This is prime time if you know what you're looking for.
I would agree. And that is a great segue into why you should be joining us on this Saturday and Sunday over at indiepodcon.com/virtual for the free independent podcast virtual conference that is happening. We have over 40 speakers. It's insane.
What's your acronym on that?
Oh God, it's not a good one. Indie IPVC. I don't know, IPVC. There you go. That sounds like a disease or something. Yeah. So so it's Icon V1 is what I'm calling it, like internally, but internally is like me. Like, so it's independent podcast conference.
Now all of a sudden that sounds like a virus.
Icon V1. So we're getting together. It's 2 days. It was supposed to be one day. It was supposed to be like 8 hours, and then we ended up getting so many submissions that it was like, well, how do I got to pare this down, and then how do I run this? I was like, well, what if I start at like 6 o'clock in the morning and go to like midnight, and even that wasn't going to be enough to get everybody in. So I was like, I guess I should go and like do it 2 days. I don't really want to do 2 days, but I'll do 2 days because I want as many people to have an opportunity to speak as possible.
That's cool.
And so here we are. So yeah, so we it's and I need to say this because they actually are a sponsor. So it's independent podcast virtual. I keep wanting to say conference, virtual conference brought to you by Blueberry. So I that is something that I need to get into my vocabulary as of yesterday night. So as of like 24 hours ago, it became official that they were our presidential partner for the event. So yeah, so it is awesome. And we're going to be raising money. It looks like we're raising money for the CDC, which apparently Facebook is matching up to like $10 million of, which is
cool,
pretty cool. So we're going to raise money. We're going to give away some things. We're going to have a ton of speakers, a lot. Like if you're just getting started with podcasting, or you want to grow your opportunities in podcasting, this is definitely an event to be in. And it's totally free. All you have to do is just join the Facebook group, which in the last like 3 days has shot up 100 members.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, wow. It's pretty insane. Yeah, so it's totally free. You don't have to, no email address required, nothing like that. Just join the Facebook group. You can leave the Facebook group afterwards if you don't have a great time and want your money back. You're free to leave.
That would be a poor choice.
I
my
would agree. I
opinion.
would like to think so, but I'm not going to make people's minds up for themselves. Like let the people have their minds.
Okay.
So anyway,
But
Doc,
as a comic, I'm allowed to just throw my opinion out there.
right, and have that I don't want to say carte blanche is the word, but I don't know. That to say things that other people
Yeah.
probably can't or shouldn't
Yeah.
say.
That's why I'm saying it for you.
Yes, and and I have a lot of friends that are like that. I'm very very thankful for, and they know who they are, who are not afraid to say the things that like younger Joe might have thought like, hey, this I don't care as much. I'm gonna say it, and now older Joe is like, I don't think it's really worth the headache here, or the worth the blowback because
So last week you would
I
have
have
said
other
that.
people.
This week,
Yeah, the whole world's upside down this
yeah,
as of
no,
a week and a half ago. So
no,
it's yeah.
not on my watch. No.
So Doc, what was it about and if anybody has any questions about niching your podcast to get faster growth, like please shoot it in the Facebook comments for this live stream here, and thank you for joining us. What's your what's some of your thoughts behind like what's some of your thoughts on why you didn't want to niche initially? Because I have my opinion of why I didn't want to niche initially, or
Well, why
why I
don't you
thought I
throw
was
yours
or
out
wasn't.
there? I'd like to hear yours.
Oh well, it's because I thought I would get bored.
Okay.
So like that was the whole thing of like, oh Joe, you love Disney, you should totally have a Disney podcast. And I'm like, yeah, no. After about 10 episodes of that, I'd probably and I love Disney World, but
Sure.
I would probably get pretty bored of that, especially if I didn't have people with me to like carry the conversation while I just sat there and just nodded right along like, yeah, that's a great idea. Like I love that. And yeah, so being able to interview anyone in any niche and bring great minds and great people together in one platform to learn from each other, that was my initial idea of like, we're going to learn from each other. Just because you don't know anything about DJing doesn't mean you can't apply it to comedy, doesn't mean you can't apply it to photography, doesn't mean you can't apply it to name your thing. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't initially, or I went about the way I did initially. And what about you, Doc?
Well, I think that's the common misconception of that.
What's that?
That you're going to be stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your show. You can do what you want, but I think there's this idea out there too. You see somebody like Joe Rogan, and you automatically go for the big dogs, not realizing that they're already there, and so you have to know your limitations also, I think. Really looking back on Filmmakers Focus, well, Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
Dream Warriors for me actually became a little too broad, and it worked great for you, Joe. That you ran with that great, but for me it was a little too broad, and I realized that I needed to niche it down a little bit, and then I went with Filmmakers Focus, which actually, in retrospect, I could have niched it down a little further and gone with something with acting, because I was always most excited to have actors on.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I could see like cinematography specifically or
Sure.
editing specific.
Yeah.
Like there's so many, it is such a broad topic.
Yeah.
Or
Well, and that's what Neil
independent
Galarte
filmmakers
is
where
doing.
they're doing all the stuff. Like, cause I'm the team. So you got to do it all.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go over that, Neil.
Yeah,
you,
Neil
Neil.
Galarte is doing all things post and doing an awesome job with that. And actually, he was my inspiration for Filmmakers Focus, because I didn't understand. I couldn't see in my mind how you would be able to take something that should be visual and make it audio friendly. And he did a wonderful job with that. He still does. And so just kind of realizing that was helpful. So then when I moved to Nashville a couple years ago, I just dropped that podcast, because I was already all in on stand up, and wanted to do a comedy podcast, of course, but I had talked to one of my friends who tours with a A-list comic, and he had just mentioned briefly that his friend that he tours with, he gets a lot of podcast requests, of course, and he'll basically just shoot them down if they're just conversation based without any direct line of thinking. So if it's something that's more niched, he's more likely to do it, and that made sense to me from both sides. But it also makes sense from a viewer's standpoint that you might want to listen to a show that has to do with comedy versus political correctness, or what your favorite joke is, or whatever it might be. Something that's a little bit more dialed in, that what you're getting when you jump in there.
So like a comedy podcast focused around knock jokes.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting on the guest side, saying like, I don't want to just go and have another conversation. And it's probably, I mean, once you get to a certain level of like constantly doing interviews and things of that nature, it's got to get monotonous, because a lot of it's got to keep coming back up.
Well, and I don't want to dog on comics too much, but a lot of that is just getting that name on their show, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They're not as interested in the content as they are the
name. Yeah. That's yeah, I guess that's a fair point. And it's a shame that people feel that that's a way, because like to me, the reality of what we've lived over the last almost 6 years in May, for me it'll be 6 years in May, is that there's so many people that I've met along the way that Dreamers Podcast has enabled me to have my fingers in so many different like corners of industries and corners of niches and corners of just so like all over the planet, that so many of these people are so driven that it doesn't really matter that they're like doing, like in your case, doing Dream Wars today, then they're doing Filmation Focus. Like the fact of the matter is that you're going to find your way, and I get to come along for that journey. And that to me is just part of the magic of getting to come up with people. The same with comics, same with like musicians or rappers, like they all come up together because they all help each other rise rather than just like push each other down. And the same, I mean, like absolutely goes for podcasting. It's to me, I still feel like I'm so young in the space, even though I've been doing it for 6 years. We're a kid. We're going to preschool, or is it 6 years old? Probably going first grade now. Like we're getting there. We're getting our running feet on. So
Jerry Seinfeld always refers to comedians' years in comedy as the years to their actual age. So if you've been in comedy 2 years, you're 2 years old. Yeah. You've been in there 15 years. Okay. You know a little bit, but really you probably think you know more than you actually do. Then 30 years in, okay, you know some stuff.
I would just somewhat would agree with that. I think it also matters on the hours and the amount of reps. I mean, I could say I'm still a DJ. I still have my equipment set up, but I wouldn't count the last 5 years as time towards that craft as much as like the first 10 years that I did it. And maybe even specifically the first 4 to 5 years that I legit was doing it. So
I'll knock myself a little bit here. I haven't been as consistent or in the game as much as you have, Joe, and we started at the same time. So again, like you're saying, time and effort is definitely more important than the time. You can say somebody's older, that doesn't necessarily mean they're wiser.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got to put the hours in, right?
Sure.
Years can help, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
Now, Magic Brad, what's up, Magic Brad? Thank you for joining us. Says, how can you niche your podcast without getting so narrow that you get bored? You want to go? Do you want to take that first there?
Yeah, sure. Well, if I was doing a podcast about nails, different types of nails that you
Like,
use in different projects,
oh, okay.
hammer and nails, I'm probably going to get bored pretty quick. So, yeah, you have to have a passion for what you're talking about. That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people on like in the YouTube space will talk about like, hey, your first 100 videos, like, don't be afraid to just do a lot of whatever to find out what parts of it you actually like, so you can amplify it and find like the people that are in AMSR.
Yeah.
Like, there's gonna be a thing for that, and if you enjoy, it turns out you actually enjoy making that, then you go right ahead and do you.
Well,
Um, Good.
if I can
Yeah.
jump in here real quick, just one thing that I knew right away with Free to Laugh was I had thrown out the concept on Facebook, and it got lots of good feedback right away, just the idea. And I even threw it out at the Nashville Podcasters group, and it got great feedback there. And it was just the concept at the time. So I knew I was on the right path, and there's something there. And even now, with a situation where comedy's, on the back burner of people's minds, I can still use it just in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, there's everybody's scrambling to get on podcasts or get in front of media, get in front of any kind of like, I'm at home and I'm doing my thing. Like, you just turn on the news, and like even some of the correspondents are sitting at their house, like, just sitting at home. So I mean, not just sitting home, obviously they're working, but they're not out and about and they're not in it, per se, like they normally would be. So they're all well, like, I guess, as far as like finding it so you wouldn't get bored, finding that niche, I think if you do some like what's the spider web idea, like the brainstorming idea thing, I can't think of the name, but basically, if you do that and you start making a list of like what you could talk about, like, oh, I love whatever it is, and then like, okay, can I list like 50 things that I could talk about, and then like branch out to that and be like, is there 10 things I could talk about specifically, and make episodes around those things? And before you know it, you're at like 100, 250, 300, 400 episodes worth of content that you could talk about. And then, yeah, mind mapping. Thank you, Brad. Figure out like, okay, if I talked about all these things, and then go and do the research to make sure that there is either not an oversaturated market, and even if it is, you still have your personality to inject it, and there's more things that you can do to bring to the table that are different and or better than what's being currently out there. But it just gives you a jumping off point to say, like, would I get bored with this? Because if you find yourself getting to like 50 topics with it, in the mind map, and you're like, yeah, I can't think of anything else, maybe this isn't the right topic for you to attack, or you need to do it in a way that, like, I'm doing a season, and this season might be 10 episodes, and then I'll come out the next season and the next season and the next season, and then hopefully by then you'll get questions or some kind of traction that tells you that you should continue down that path anyway.
That was also something that I did with Filmmakers Focus, which I didn't remember until you just said that, but I broke it down into seasons because I was getting slammed with work, and I just didn't have the time to devote to doing it as a weekly podcast. And and then something else to throw in there with Free to Laugh, I have it pretty much narrowed down to two things that I really want to drive home, I guess, or two things that I really enjoy about the show is getting to hear other comedians' stories of, somebody been out of shape over a joke, that type of stuff. Always hearing those stories, you kind of listen to them and you're like, what the, like, that doesn't make sense, but it does, it makes different sense to different people. But I enjoy those stories. And then also for me, it's just the passion part would be I really feel like there's freedom in laughter. And if the more stuff that we can find humor in, the better off we all are. So once those are the two things that I kind of hone in on. And then I don't get bored with that.
I think because like specifically without getting so narrow that you get bored, like I think if you can find something that's narrow enough that you can put out like 50, 60 episodes and then see like if there's other people, then you'll start to see like what does your audience actually want to hear, right? What do they want to for you to talk about? So then it turns into, okay, maybe we started out with like the idea that, okay, I don't want to talk about just film in general, because then you're talking about actors, you're talking about cameras, you're talking about lights, you're talking about all the things that go with each other. So like we're going to narrow down and just like this is the lighting podcast. We're going to talk about lights and for filmmaking lights or something to that effect. And you start doing that, but then it over time, like you end up building an audience that's like, we like this, but we also want to hear about the I don't know, like camera equipment that isn't about cameras, like in the tech of cameras, but like the accessories that go along with cameras, right? Or something to that effect. So you go off of like what you have at that point. But I don't know, like I said, if you got to be able to be able to write out a whole bunch of topics and see, is this something that you would like to be feel confident in talking about. And the more narrow, the better, because you're more likely to find people that are like looking for something very specific. And because we don't have, this isn't back in like the 70s or whatever, where they're like, hey, you have 4 channels and that's what you get. Like you get what you get. You don't get upset about it. And we're just going to run a bunch of variety shows and the news and that's it. And now we have like, you want the dog channel? Hey, we have a whole channel about dogs, or we have a whole podcast just about dog leashes, or or the Horse Radio Network with Glenn the Geek, like everything based around that. Brad adds, Joe Rogan does not seem to have a niche. He does comedy, MMA, drugs, current events, etc., etc. Yes, but here's the thing: Joe Rogan has spent years and years becoming himself. Like he didn't just wake up and be like, I'm Joe Rogan, so I'm just going to talk about everything. And you see a lot of those podcasts do not take off. They do not get the recognition. They do not blow up very fast or big unless they have somebody that's already a big name that people are already coming to. In the case of Joe Rogan, he had already done MMA. He had done the Fear Factor show for a number of years. He did he's done other stuff too, announcing in the MMA world, as well. So so like he already had an established name, and that's like and saying right. Oh yeah, and stand up on top of that. So so like you can't really compare yourself to that unless you're willing to put in like the 25 years of building up to that. And at that point you still have to be good at one thing, right? And that's, in his case, it's talking, it's thinking. Brad said Fear Factor. So I wouldn't look at it like that. And it's not that you can't. So I've always thought about it this way. You can go about building things in 2 different ways, and tell me what you think of this, Doc. You can build the star power yourself, right? So that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You're building the niche, you're creating your own lane, which takes a ton of time to do. Or you could hit your star on somebody else's somebody else's star power. So in that case, it's like, hey, we're going to talk about Disney World. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we've niched from Disney down to Disney World, and there's already like a massive amount of things there. And people want to hear about Disney World. They go there, they spend tons of money there. It's like a cult following. I should know. It's, so it's like, at that point, it's like, does Joe Pardo matter so much as Joe Pardo's talking about Disney World and people want to hear about Disney World? So you're hitching your like show to the star power of something else that already has the marketing, so people know what Disney World is, and you're not trying to educate people on who Joe Pardo is. And in my case, I took the long path of that one. So what do you think?
Let me ask you this, Joe. If you had it to do again, would you, when you were starting, was Dreamers podcast a good format? If you had it to do again, would you go with that format?
You know, it's hard to say, because I would love to have a top, like a niche, right? That the niche would have potentially given me a lot faster rise, because I could put more effort behind like just focusing in that one particular thing, instead of trying to build like a whole, like literally like a highway for myself instead of just one even just one lane. But here's the thing that it did that I didn't have prior to the Dreamers podcast, was I didn't have a network of people from around the world. Like I had a network, but my network was really in the trucking world, the truck parts world, that was majority of the network that I had, outside of like the people I went to high school with and a little bit of college in. So and a lot of those people were in tech. So like and while I love tech, it's not something I would probably want to necessarily, like, I watch a lot of tech tubers, tech YouTubers, but that's because that's what I want to consume, not what I really want to create about all the time. So the Dreamers podcast, while it's a much longer trail to get to where I feel like I'm kind of almost like looking down the hallway of where I want to be. Now it's, I had to put in the reps, and I needed to go somewhere with it, and building a network at the same time. I mean, I see it now as two things, right? Business and the and this and the podcast conference. So podcasters, podcasting, and all that. So I don't know. What I loved about doing the Dreamers podcast, though, and I'm wondering if it's the same with you, Doc, was it gave me the ability to talk to anyone at a time when that wasn't really happening so much at the time. So again, I wasn't so like I wouldn't get bored, but also so that I could be like, hey, you're a really interesting person. I have the perfect show for you to come on. It's called the Dreamers Podcast, and you would be a great guest for that show.
Well, the reason I let that one go, I just wasn't getting the traffic, and I wasn't getting the interaction. And you did an awesome job with that. So I'm like, well, I
still feel like I could have did better. I still feel like I could do better at it.
Well, we all could.
Yeah.
We're all growing.
Yeah.
You're not going to cut yourself some slack, but I'll cut you some. So.
Well, thank you, Doc.
Yeah. But, that was what it was. And I did appreciate the ability to talk to anybody. But at the same time, like, I do see a little bit, for me in my career as a stand-up comic, I definitely see more value in talking to comedians and kind of going down that road than I would just having a broad view of whoever was chasing a dream, So, there's pros and cons, and you just have to weigh them out and figure out what's best for you on your journey.
I think, I had a thought and it went out my head. You
coughed it out.
Yeah, I did. I literally didn't even realize it. I think that I knew what I was gonna say. So yeah, over time, the Dreamers podcast went from like inspiring people to live their dreams and like interviewing people living their dreams to help you and blah 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 to like, okay, now I'm like pretty much talking to like entrepreneurs, small business owners about business. And it went from Dreamers podcast to Dreamers podcast business lessons from those that live their dreams, to which it kind of already was even prior to that, but but I just didn't realize it, and I wish I had realized it sooner. And and then I ended up changing the name to Business with Super Joe Pardo for 2 years, and now we're back to Dreamers Podcast with Super Joe Pardo, and I'm mostly happy with that. But I will tell you, I have thought about changing the name up again, keeping the same format and stuff, just maybe something that's somewhere more, a little more business oriented, small business oriented, entrepreneur, and geared, and so I'm not opposed to it. I do love the fact that I've come back to the same name as before, and I feel like I could keep riding it, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Joe Rogan's such a horrible example of successful podcast. And he really is. He's an awful example of successful podcasting because he was an actor, because he was on TV, because he had airspace all over. One thing I love is there's an old episode of The Office where Michael says, "I'm a big fan of anything Joe Rogan does." Well, that was meant as a slight because at that time Joe Rogan was doing stupid shows, or what was seen as just lame stuff. And he was just working through to find what worked. This was before he started working with UFC, and it was before he started doing his podcast. And I don't think he was even doing stand-up again at the time. Stand-ups go through seasons sometimes. So, yeah, everybody's got their own journey that they're on. Comparing yourself to the very best is not a good way to go in anything.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a real zero-sum game there that you're flirting with. And it just it'll make you feel like trash. Like, there's been plenty of times where I felt like that, because I'm like, man, like all these other people seem to be getting like 1 million downloads, and like I ain't getting no 1 million downloads. Where the heck's my 1 million downloads? Like, I'm talking to people literally all day long, and I'm not getting there. But I will say this: I'm always surprised by like some of the people that I'm friends with that I didn't realize they were listening to my show, and it turns out they are listening to my show, and they would tell me out of the blue, like, "Oh, I was listening to the show and blah blah blah, and this is what I thought," and I'm like, "Oh wow, like I didn't know that you listened." I really deeply appreciate that, because like, I mean, obviously I still get downloads, even though this year has been not a great year for creating content for me, which I need to get back on. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll wake up and do another episode. It's just yeah. But
I'm
part
available.
of that, you're available. Well, I'm just doing like solo episodes at this point.
You're doing solos? Oh man.
Yeah. So see, obviously you don't listen to the show. So
How many episodes of Free to Laugh have you listened to, Joe?
I'll get back to you on that one. No, I don't really listen to podcasts, and that's what that's one of the things that I don't read a lot. I don't really read books. Sure. I don't listen to podcasts. I barely watch any TV, though. In the last week and a half, I've been watching nonstop, like flipping between CNN and Fox News to see what's going on. And
why would you waste your time with that, Joe?
Well, because I had 2 kids, man. Like, there's a world going on. I want to know what's going on.
It's not going to hinge on you knowing anything.
Probably not.
Some fun. Have some fun, my friend.
I am. Believe me, I am.
I see the pinball machine behind you. That looks awesome.
That's that is actually a pitch and bat machine.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool. Where did you get
that? So from a cross-dressing arcade operator in Pennsylvania. It was an interesting time. But yeah, no, I'm so glad I did.
Awesome, bro.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like a lot.
So you have your friends over and they bring quarters.
Yeah, no, it's all set to free to play, and I got this shuffle alley as well, and there's a basketball net right over there.
Dude, what? Yeah.
Well, I'm in my garage, right? So my car's
right there.
Well, yeah. So, yeah. So when we have parties and stuff, we turn the arcade machines on and set them free to play. So I
got to get some shows near Philly.
Yeah, please do. You have a place to stay if you do, for sure. So definitely make that. So as long as we're not social distancing at that point, you have some place to stay.
Oh, I'm good.
Um,
I'll stay in the garage, and you can stay in the house, and I'll play all your games, and yeah, I'll even host your show.
So. Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. So before we move forward, I just wanted to throw it out there. You know, we are still marching forward to September 24th to the 26th in the Philadelphia Swedesboro area. If you want to get a show out that Philadelphia area, at that time, Doc, it'd be awesome to come out to Icon 6.
At this point, I would love a show anywhere at any time.
Anytime. Well, we're doing it right now. Hooray! And you know,
I just miss that live audience, Joe. There's
I know
people have asked me if I would do like a Facebook Live stand-up set. Well, I do crowd work. How am I supposed to do that when you're over there? You know, it's not going to work.
There's no vibe. I know. As a DJ, I totally understand what you're talking about, and as a speaker, I totally get it as well. Even though I don't consider myself a stand-up comic, speaking is I try to speak from a place of comedic work to make me feel more comfortable, if nothing else.
I'll be happy to go through your talk and punch it up for you.
Well, if if that ever happens, we'll get. I'll shoot it over to you, and you can take a look at it and poke around with it. Okay. If you want to save 10% at Icon 6 this year, go to indiepodcon.com/register. Use offer code IPP to save 10%. If you want to be a guest on this show, that's a thing. You can go to indiepodcon.com/guest. And if you haven't heard, Saturday and Sunday, this Sunday, we're doing a virtual conference in our Facebook group. It's 2 days long, over 40 speakers. It's going to be ridiculous, but you're going to learn so much about podcasts. So much about podcasting. You can go to indiepodcon.com/virtual to get the schedule. Check out all of our sponsors. That's Independent Podcast Virtual Conference, brought to you by Blueberry. I got to keep remembering to say that now.
You did better that time.
Oh, thank you. So let's see. So I was wondering, now, since you have niched Doc down further, what level of like measurable success, like I'm going to put it in quotes, success, since it's so subjective, have you seen over your previous ventures in podcasting?
The podcast itself is still a baby. I'm at like 16 episodes, so somewhere around there. We moved in the last few weeks, so I'm a little bit behind. As far as for me, the biggest win that I can have is booking gigs through it right now. That can change. I do plan on having merch available, free to laugh merch, and maybe even eventually writing a book. But right now the best thing that I can do is be a guest on other shows like yours here, and be a guest on other podcasts, and try to. Right now, I just want to be on stage. So like that's what I want the most. But doing this, and getting to share. Just share with folks, this is great. And so yeah, it's still in its infancy, so it's hard to tell. I took the long way to get there, but it's hard to tell right now how that's really shaken out. I want to get I just want to keep going down this road and seeing where it goes. So, yeah, if you ask me in a year, I'll have a better answer for you.
Isn't that the story of all?
I should have just come to that right off the bat. Dang it.
It's okay.
Why did it take me so long?
Because we could all say that about everything.
I know.
Almost everything.
I rambled on. You just lost 5 viewers off of that.
It's all good. It's all worth it for you, Doc.
Well, thanks, buddy.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh, speaking of which, hey, I need to promote you as a friend.
What's that? What's
You-
that? What do you do?
You remember this?
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wow, that's so awesome.
So, Super Joe Pardo. This is how good a friend he is. He just says, what's your mailing address? I give it to him. And all of a sudden, this thing shows up. And he's like, hey, I was in Vegas, and this guy painted this thing. And I'm a Seahawks fan. This is like right after they won the Super Bowl. And happiest as a clam, So, and I still have that. Since we moved, we don't have it up yet, but it lives on.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. I don't want to say I forgot about doing it because I totally remember doing it, but
Yeah.
I forgot that I had sent that to you.
Oh yeah.
That's so awesome.
I remember for sure.
Oh man. Well, it's been a lot of changes over the years. I mean, you got married well, how long, like a year ago now?
April 25th.
Okay, so almost
Yes.
a year ago. Oh, that's awesome.
Almost. Yeah. So we got married at the NFL draft.
Yes, I was quite shocked when I saw that post. Did anybody else realize that was happening, or was that like just you
We
and some
didn't
people?
notice. We didn't really. Oh, you mean at the draft? Did they notice?
Did anybody, like, did your friends that went with you, or like family, like who was there?
Yeah, we had 3 friends. One of my friends is a minister, and he did the ceremony. And we went down to 2nd and Broadway down here in Nashville, down on the big street. They were having the NFL draft here in Nashville. And it was awesome. I was so dialed in, Joe. I was just so I was listening to my friend Wes, and I was dialed in with Rebecca. And for a few moments there, nothing, I knew there was all this stuff going on around me, but I was just so dialed in. I just didn't notice anything. And then, after we kissed, I noticed there's like this huge group of folks around us, and there was already thousands of people down there. It wasn't like we were all alone, but, there was thousands. But then there was some people that had gathered around because they saw there was something special going on in the middle of the day. So it was awesome.
That is awesome. So are you like, how did that get planned? Like, what was the, like, how?
Well, so we're both from the same part of Washington State, and we had a ceremony about 3 weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later. But it was easier for us to just knock things out legally in Tennessee than have to deal with that back in Washington State. So
did it make the news? Did it make the news down there? Like,
I think it did. There was a news camera that came over and was taking shots. And
I mean, I would think that they would. Like,
I never did see the footage, though.
Oh, that stinks.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing there, but it's all good. I mean, I'm an NFL junkie. So one of my dreams all my life had been to go to the NFL draft. I'd never been to the NFL draft. And, my other dream was to get married. I got to knock them both out the same day. I mean, God is good. That was awesome.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. So
and then,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, then Rebecca got her ceremony, a few weeks later, and we had our family and friends out there, and that was great. So both days mean a lot to us.
Yeah. So what's something that you would say the podcasting has enabled for you?
Friendship, Joe. I mean, I don't want to, and I mean this from my heart, like having you as a friend has meant a lot to me. Like every time I log on to do a podcast, I remember that you helped me set up the audio on my computer so that my microphone would work correctly. and it still does. You know. But had you not walked me through that, I would still be going.
Oh my god, no way! Stop. You were
Yeah.
doing audio and stuff too, like.
Well,
No
that was
way.
later. That was later, though.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess you're right. Yeah, that was later.
I remember you looking it up. You helped me out, and you were a guest on the show that day, I think. So it was.
You're not the only show I've done this to. Like even Mackenzie from Blueberry. Like I remember her interviewing me, and I'm like, okay, hold on. Like you're just like not, your gate is like turned up way too high, so I'm only catching like the third word into your sentence, coming off your mic, and just trying to troubleshoot through the through the camera. Yeah, I've done a lot of that kind of stuff over the years.
Well, it meant a lot to me, so thank you.
You're so welcome. I for anybody, man.
For me, it's always the relationships, and then you get a few episodes where you're like, that was cool. There's an episode of Free to Laugh that is me and comedian Joby Sad, and Joby's been a comic for 30 years, and he's just an awesome guy.
His actual name, like Sad?
Yeah, SAAD.
That's what I thought. That's what I was thinking. But I wasn't sure if it was like Joby Sad, like SAD, like
no.
like a clown kind of name or something,
Yeah. Oh, he's a clown, but we did our podcast recording driving around Nashville. So I recorded
that's awesome.
From the passenger seat in the car. There's all sorts of fun stuff along the way, but we ended up having this deep conversation, and it was really good. So yeah, if you only listen to one episode, Joe, and you haven't even listened to one,
you're right. If you listen to I will try to make that. I will try to pull that off in the morning.
And I was actually really proud of the audio on that one because I wasn't sure how the ambient sound is going to be with being in a car.
Car noise can be difficult.
It actually turned out really good, and I was pretty proud of that one. So you have
awesome.
those times, but it's all about connecting with folks and hearing their stories and being able to give to them. And for me doing this show, you asking me, it was about supporting you for me. I just wanted to be able to give to you because you've meant a lot to me.
Oh, you mean a lot to me, Doc. I'm glad that we were able to make it work, and
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're still podcasting. I think that
me too.
that right there is the one of the keys, right? Because you're not always going to hit a home run with your first show. I mean, speaking of which, Joel Bogus, what if you're watching, Joel? What's up, man? You were calling me. And I had to decline your phone call, of course. And for anyone who doesn't know, like his seventh show or sixth show was called Relaunch, and he ran with that for a number of years. And now he's specifically just doing speaking engagements, mostly to like nurse conventions, conferences, and that kind of stuff. Based on like the fact that he his life almost came to a premature end when he was a kid, but thanks to the work of nurses and doctors, they were able to save his life. So he so he went through a number of shows, and I think it says a lot to our industry. Like the longer I'm in it, the more I see like the people that are serious about it, that have stick around. It's a lot of the same names. They might not have the same shows, or they might have 5 shows. I mean, heck, right now I do 3 shows. So it's it's not so much about the show so much as it's about being around in the community and the people and people that are driven to like for more than just to exist and just go about like life like on autopilot.
Well, and being able to meet people in person. When I moved to back in when I was near Seattle, we didn't really have a big podcast community out there. We had some, Jody Mayberry's out there, Amy,
Amy,
out there. So there's some folks, and we got to connect in person, and that was awesome. But when I moved out here, it's really strong. The Nashville Podcasters Group is really strong, and just being able to connect with guys like like Dan Miller. I mean, Dan Miller, that was the first podcast I ever listened to, was 48 Days. And I didn't know what a podcast was before that, so just getting to connect with him and Jeff Brown. I should stop naming names, but
drop all names. It's all good.
Angus Nelson.
Is Joshua Rivers in your area? No,
he's Oklahoma City.
Okay.
I did get to we got to meet in person when I moved out here. Yeah, I was passing through Oklahoma City, and him and his lovely family took me out for dinner, and that meant a lot to me. That was cool.
That is awesome. Yeah, I love Joshua Rivers. I haven't spoken to him in a little while, actually. They're just, some of these people that I need to reconnect with. And I mean, I don't know. Is he still podcasting?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I'm not sure either. Yeah. So Josh, if you're listening, like, let's have a conversation and figure out. The one thing I remember, one of the things I remember about Joshua Rivers was he said that they weren't going to go on any like Disney or any vacations until they paid off their house.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, I don't know, that was probably like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. They might be done at that at this point, or close to it. They just
moved in. I think they were just moving into a new house when I saw them. So.
That's a good excuse to not go to Disney World. Like, geez, man, like if you're looking for excuses, there's plenty of other ways to excuse it away.
Oh, let's just go buy a house.
Yeah, and we'll just have to move everything we own. Believe me, I'm never looking to do that ever again.
Bro, we moved like 200 yards away.
Oh, that's like the worst.
It is the worst.
Yeah, because it's not like you can't get a truck, right?
That's
like,
it.
Yeah, you get it. That's horrible.
Yeah. So half the stuff I'm just walking all the way. The other stuff I'm putting in the car, and we're driving 100 yards because I had to walk 50 yards to put it in the car. And then it was like, and I mean, I get it, but it was like these tornadoes had hit Nashville. And, my selfish side is like, oh, great. Now those people are helping tornado victims. Nobody's here to help me.
Nobody help you. Right. Yeah, those darn tornadoes getting in the way. That stuff, I don't know. I don't know if I could live down in that area. I mean, we get scared when we had tornadoes here, and I'm like, the only thing that's going to happen is like a lawn chair is going to come through a window. Like, that's about the worst that's going to happen with a tornado in South Jersey.
Or the whole house goes. I mean,
not here. It's not here. Like, seriously, like maybe a grill. Maybe a grill would come through a window. Maybe.
Yeah.
But like that would be the most extreme case.
Dude, it was unreal here because I've never been in this environment, So coming from Montana and Washington, we don't get that type of stuff up there. And it was somber. The first week that I drove through a neighborhood about 3 days after, and it looked like those post-apocalyptic movies where there's just dust everywhere. There's wires on the ground, all these just destruction everywhere. Look, it's just this stench, it just felt horrible. And then you turn on the next block and it's like nothing happened. It's wild. But
yeah, we had that with we had was it a macro burst or straight winds or something that happened here where we lost power for like 5 days.
Yeah.
Like 4.5 years ago, I think it was. We left like the day after it happened. We left. We went to Florida. We took everything out of the freezer. It was like, well, that's the end of that. Or no, actually, I think we might have given some of this stuff to a neighbor of ours and just left it in their freezer and then left for Disney World. I was like, just take what you want because we'll be back in like 11 days or 12 days. I wasn't working at the time. Melissa was a teacher on summer break, so it was just kind of like whatever. Whenever we were driving, so it didn't really matter when we came back. Other than that, I couldn't afford a hotel for like a month. That was one of the stipulations of going, but that's where we found out that we were having Ava actually. So wow. Yeah, so it was
awesome.
And we got to spend hang out with our friend Beatrice and a bunch of other people in a bungalow overlooking the the Magic Kingdom castle on
Oh,
4th of
wow.
July fireworks. It was awesome.
Whoa.
Yeah, she like
Wow.
Beatrice was like, I'm renting this. It was like brand new. They just put these bungalows in the water,
Oh,
and
that's
it was,
awesome.
they just opened, and she was like, I'm using my points. I'm going to get this. And we're gonna have a
Whoa.
party in here, and that's where I got to meet Jeff Barnes, Dr.
Oh,
Jeff
wow.
Barnes. Yeah, that he came out of that. We interviewed him for a show that I was doing with Krista Joy, called Living the Dream Podcast, which was
I remember that one.
Yeah, I really loved doing that show. We interviewed some awesome, Disney legends and stuff. I wish we had kept doing it because we were making money at it before we even had a show. We had sold sponsorships for it, but still love Krista and Beatrice and Jeff, and it's a memory I'll cherish forever. I know it's a memory that Jeff cherishes forever because it reminds me all of the time. And yeah, so those, those are the things that you will get when you. That's a perfect example of niching. Interviewing people that are in the Disney, in the Disney community, in the Disney verse, if you will, legends as well. And there's an example of the people that you get to meet because of your podcast. Because of the Dreamers podcast, I got to meet Beatrice Feeney, and she was like one of my first 20 episodes on the show. And I think she told me that her current husband Googled her, found that podcast episode, and had to learn about her whole life story.
Oh, wow.
Prior to like her getting to learn that much about his life story. But it's just those types of things.
Should have had
really
him
cool
on the show.
Yeah. I mean, you just never know. Like, I think the important part is just doing it, and then figuring out like what success is going to look like for you. And while niching definitely can give you success faster, unless you're putting in the reps and putting in the time, it's not you got to get good, right? Dave Jackson always said the same thing. Don't ask how I make money. Don't ask how I get this big audience. Ask, how do I get good? And then you can go and start asking those questions of like, how do I get more listeners? And how do I get more, guest spots on other shows and media, blah, blah, blahs, and money and all those other things.
Yeah. Just watching you grow, Joe, like you've just become a great interviewer. And like when you started, there was more hiccups, and
there was the question. I had all my questions written out. Like,
I remember that.
Yeah,
a lot of very long pauses, and you're like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna edit this."
I wish I could get all that time back. I wish I could have just, instead of editing, just produced more episodes and then just put out, like, with the exception of like super long pauses. Like I do the writing the timestamps down and then edit backwards. But yeah, like you just screw editing.
You become more confident in yourself as a person. You become more confident in yourself as a
I'd like to think so, but I don't know.
No, I think you are.
Oh, thank you.
Again, I'll speak it for you. But you just become, and this will go for folks, across the board, that you've been doing this 6 years, and so now you've developed this voice and this platform, but it didn't come overnight.
No.
And in this age of wanting microwave everything, there's some stuff that has to be put in a crock pot. So you're just going to have to, either you do it or you don't. There's a reason that the average podcast only lasts 7 episodes.
Yeah. There is a good reason for that. And yeah, I wish more people would look past that. And I think a lot of times it becomes like time management. It becomes the tech gets too heavy, or like I gotta edit, or I gotta do this, or I don't like the way my voice sounds, or there's so many like excuses that we can come up for ourselves to just keep like pulling us back. And I mean, I've been guilty of it myself with like my newest episodes of the Dreamers podcast were shot for YouTube. So I was shooting like vlog style video and then stripping the audio out and turning that into the podcast. Well, that requires editing. That requires, video editing at that, which takes definitely longer than audio editing. And it requires more thought in like thinking about like, okay, what kind of B-roll do I want to get? Where am I going to film and all that? And it's like when all in reality, like my newest episode that just came out last Thursday, I just literally sat right here and was like, okay, I need to do an update episode where I just talk about like where the heck I've been for a month and a half or 2 months, and talk about the coronavirus and talk about, being down in Disney and like dealing with needing hand sanitizer every 20 seconds and kids that are trying to like touch everything. And, those are the things that I just was like, I need to talk about this. And then I could at least have a clean slate so I can get back into some topics and things like that. And even having the Business Geeks podcast with Jennifer Crawford and Samantha Riley, like that is just so much fun to like just jump on, talk about business for an hour, and then send it off to Leon and let him handle he wants to do editing, be my guest. It's good. That's awesome. I'm happy for you.
Well, I do editing for a School of Laughs podcast, and that's a pretty big it's a big show. Rick Roberts is the host. He has the School of Laughs, which is a comedy training school. And
okay.
So that's been a great relationship, me and Rick. I got to meet Rick in person. He was another one that we knew each other online. And then we connected when I moved out here. And then he asked me to take on the editing of his show. So, but those are great relationships that, I just enjoy the ride, and if you don't, like the question earlier, if you get niched out or whatever, go do another one. It's no big deal.
TV shows get canceled all the time.
Sure.
It's a thing that happens. People get tired of that.
Just
format.
Don't cancel yourself too quick.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, that's why I think you do the mind mapping and try to figure out where you're going to head and then start to put a plan. I mean, I have a spreadsheet with like 200 topics for the Dreamers podcast that I could easily turn it. Like, I mean, it would take a lot of time to do like one episode at a time, but like I could turn that into 200 episodes like that. Well, like that, like real over time, because I'm not just going to sit here and crank out episode after episode. Though batch recording would probably be good, but I know that like I already have like 400 episodes. Like, it's okay. Like, just go listen to another episode. There's plenty of episodes to go listen to.
Well, one thing I didn't mention earlier, and I should have, I didn't think of it at the time, but I had recorded when I went to do my comedy podcast. I recorded, I don't know, 5 episodes that never made it out. They never will. And it was just me trying out different things. I thought I wanted to go this way. No, that didn't work. I thought I wanted to go this other way. No, that didn't work. And then finally settled in where we're at, so it took even times of trying different options, and so, I mean, figure out what's going to work. And just hearing it yourself. I think if you just record with somebody, if you're going to do a guest show, just record with somebody, record it the way that you think you want it to go, and then see if that's going to work. And if it doesn't, no big deal, tweak it to where it's going to work for you.
Yeah, I would say I would agree a lot, because like when I was doing the pilot episode for the TV show, the Top of Super Joe Pardo, I had in my mind what I wanted to look like, and I was putting it together. And I guess I didn't do the best job in conveying that to the person I was working with at the time to help produce the thing. And ultimately I decided to go at it solo for the editing part of it, because I really wanted to just get what was in my mind out. And I didn't know if it was going to work or not. I kind of felt confident that I had enough to do it, but I you don't do it until you actually do it, right? Like,
sure.
And then figure out like, okay, do I need to go and reshoot some things, or do I need to like create something that what wasn't actually there that day? Like in the case, did you happen to see that episode of the top?
I saw you. I remember you putting it together. I haven't seen it.
Okay, no, that's fine. There's a scene where we go and we clean out her whole entire garage to create a workspace for her. Well, we put on the same clothes, and that was a different day. That was a different day entirely. With a different person helping me film. So it's like, sometimes that, and shout out to Maxwell Ivy for pointing out the fact that I needed to go do that. And that created some beautiful relationships between Max and Sandra and myself and some of the other people involved. So you just never, you just never know until you actually get it all put together and see what the final product is going to look like. So you don't feel bad about it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Where is that show on its journey?
Where is that show on its journey? Well, to be honest, last Sunday I was supposed to film episode 2 with with Matthew Passy, the podcast consultant. Sorry. So that's where that is right now. It took so much time to do the first episode that I realized like, oh no, like I got this podcast conference coming up in like 2 months and I really need to buckle down and get that stuff ready to go. Sure. So I just was like, okay, like I put way too much time into getting the pilot, like pump the brakes. Let's go back to the conference, got the conference out of the way. And then it's been in growth mode for the conference ever since. I mean, even just today we've gained 100 members in the group, in our Facebook group today. Wow. Pretty much, like 90 some in one day.
Yeah. So do you have any reason for that?
Yeah, so there's a virtual conference, the Independent Podcast Virtual Conference, brought to you by Blueberry hosting, that is happening Saturday and Sunday, and people are finding out about it. And the way to watch it is to go join the Facebook group. It'll be streaming in there all day long, both Saturday and Sunday. So you should totally go and do that. I think we need to wrap it up here, Doc. I need you to tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can get your show, how they can get to your comedy site.
Yeah.
Go.
How you can book me. Because I want to come live. I want to do some jokes. I want to come do a show. So I'm actually booking May on. So I do all venues. But reach out to me at dockennedylive.com or the podcast at freetolaugh.us. And Joe, this has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
It's the honor and privilege is all mine, sir. I truly appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do and how you go about doing it. And it does mean a lot to me, because there's like, again, as I said in the beginning, there's things that I can't say because I know I can't say them, that I appreciate that other people are willing to say them. So even if I'm not the one leading the charge, I know who to look at with in regards to some of those things. So even if I don't agree with everything, I appreciate the freedom of speech aspect of all freedom of speech. And freedom to laugh. Everybody, I really appreciate all of you taking the time to watch. I know it was a little late tonight in the views and the comments, and that's okay. You can get all of this episode and every other episode of the IndiePod podcast over at indiepodcon.com. Next week's episode is with Jenny Wren, and she told me how to say her name when I saw her at Podfest. Stotrup. I think it's Stotrup. Because you say her name and you look at it and you're like, you see an R. The R is there. I had this conversation with her. She's like, everybody wants to add an R to my name, and it's not that. Like Strot, but it's Stot, Strup.
Joe.
Yes,
Joe.
Stotrup.
I think you just hit stop. Did you just say stop?
I
think
did
that
not.
was what.
I did not. I probably should, but no. Jenny is a wonderful person, and I'm looking forward to having her on next year. I'm so glad I got to meet her, even if only for a little bit at Podfest.
Are you sure that's how you pronounce Jenny?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
This is
boy.
like
Tune
of all
in
the
next
things,
week.
yeah, right. Of all the things that I have done in my podcasting career, pronouncing names is not one of them, and I attribute that to my man Matt Hochberg. Shout out to Matt Hochberg, who would routinely butcher names on his show, the WDW Today. And that's okay, right? It's all right, Matt. I got your back. I know what's up. I know.
Well,
it's
we'll
okay.
see what Jenny thinks.
Yeah, she. Well, here's the thing. So she's excited because next week is April 1st. So we are going to have an April 1st kind of show, apparently. So hopefully we're not pushing the boundaries too far.
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah. Yes, I will have all the dad
I
jokes.
will be. Yeah, I'll be happy to virtually heckle you both.
Please do. It'll be a pleasure. 8:00 Eastern Standard Time next Wednesday at 8. Yeah, I already said 8 p.m. April 1st. Anyway, join us this weekend. Go to indiepodcon.com/virtual and join in on the fun that's going to be happening. I still have a lot of things to figure out. Like, how am I going to wear? I'm not wearing headphones for 9 hours. I mean, it's definitely not these Sonys, because these things are not comfortable at all. I might break out the gamer headphones, because these are a lot more comfortable.
You do what you gotta do, bro. I mean, you're hosting this thing.
It's a long period.
Yeah. I don't know. On the flip side, you did kind of put yourself in this corner. So
I did, and you know what? Well, that's because I ask myself all the time, like, well, what would Super Joe Pardo do? And then I told Melissa, I said, maybe I need to change my name from Super Joe Pardo to Joe Pardo the Ridiculous, because like, it seems that whatever I want to do, it just ends up coming out ridiculous.
Well,
and
maybe you just ask Super Joe what he would do, and then just ask
do the
Joe.
opposite. Oh yeah, just Joe. Just do the like George Costanza.
Yeah, exactly. Do the opposite, man. This thing is canceled.
What
my ears can't take it.
No, I will definitely. I'll be switching out headphones probably all day. I already started pulling out different pairs of headphones so I could swap out throughout the day. So it's constantly giving me a different look on my head. Just so that I could stay comfortable. Yeah. Well, I like it too, because right now with these things, my head feels like it's like being pinched. It like
grab you some earbuds, mix it up.
Yes. Yeah. No, I do. I got 2 different types of earbuds. I might use my Apple AirPods for a little bit. Like I said, the gaming.
You got options.
I have a lot of headphones. a lot of headphones I could break out for across the day, just to get different looks on my head and pressure on my head.
Yeah, and it might look like a brand new episode, of something else, and people are like, "Oh, I better click in now."
Yeah, something else is going. Well, I don't want to be sitting for the whole day either, so I'm trying to. I got to hook up one of my other webcams as well, and I'm gonna do multiple camera setups. And
oh man,
yeah, so that part probably won't come till like Friday when I figure out what the heck I'm gonna do. I might just like pull my car out, and then I can like maneuver things around. I don't know.
Dude, why don't you do it from your car?
The whole thing from my car.
Yeah, you can kick that seat back, just relax.
I could do that here. Look, I got the game.
Oh, you got it there. There you go. Yeah, you're good. Just make sure that you got guests that are willing to talk for an hour by themselves.
Well, they are going to talk for 20 minutes. So like,
without you?
No. Yeah. No back and forth? No back and forth. No back and forth.
Awesome.
I mean, maybe 1 or 2, but pretty much no back and forth. So they're going to speak, like, basically I'll come on, talk about our sponsors, talk about a mastermind that me and Samantha Riley are putting together. Actually, 2 masterminds that Samantha Riley and I are putting together. And then get back, talk about raising money for the charity that will probably end up being the CDC. And then let the speaker talk, and then I just be like, And then when they're done, I come back. And move on to the next person. So, all right,
Joe,
everybody.
I got to throw this out there real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
Have you seen Airplane?
A long time ago at this point.
So there's Otto, and he's the autopilot, and they hit the auto button, and this blow up doll pops up.
Oh yeah,
and he takes over. That's what you need. You need Otto Super Joe. Just have him sit there. You can run off, do whatever else.
Maybe we'll see. I think
it's a short
I'll
time.
let my daughter take over.
Oh, there you go.
Take over. She can talk for 2 minutes and then introduce the next person. So yeah, so it'll be fun. Come and join us, and yeah, I hope you all have a great week, and hopefully I'll see you this weekend in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Love you too, Doc. I appreciate you.